I'm Caitlin and welcome back to the Lit Review. Today I'm going to do a video that I got a couple of requests for, and that is some examples for January's prompt for the Book Covered Book Club. This is my book club where we pick books based on the cover. Just to give you a really quick rundown of what it's like to be part of the Book Covered Book Club, there are monthly prompts and you can read as many or as few that fit the prompt as you want. You can try to do it all in 1 month, in a week, if you want to make that your challenge, but I've spaced it out so that there's kind of one prompt for every month of the year. But the prompts are always going to be different kinds of things that you might find on a book cover. And specifically, we're looking at three main categories here. They're going to be either a trend that seems to be really popular, either currently or maybe in the past. There might be a thing, so like a very specific image that you need to kind of check the box off of. Or it could just be a color, because colors are a really important part of how we see and select our book covers. Today, what we're going to do is I'm going to go over January's prompt as well as February's, so that you can kind of get a kickstart there. If you'd like to join us for the Book Covered Book Club, it's very casual, very low stakes. I will leave the link to the Discord down below, as well as the story graph challenge for those of you who really like to plot and plan and tick boxes off. I will also be posting on my Instagram a couple of other examples, some of which you'll see here in this video, but there will also be a photo challenge prompt on my Instagram. So if you want to participate by taking a photo of your read, there's another way to do that. I'm going to give you roughly 10 examples for each month's prompt, again, January and February, so that you can just kind of get inspired. I'm not going to go too deep on the plot synopsis, but I will kind of tell you a little bit about the genre, why I think that book cover is relevant for the prompt, things like that. Let's get to it. All right, so the prompt for January is an ornate pattern on the cover. And I got really excited about this because I feel like this is something I've seen a lot in certain genres, but it's almost like starting to trickle into other genres, which is what I think makes it an exciting trend. And there were some requests specifically to see some examples of this in the Discord, which is why we're here together. So the prompt for ornate pattern on the cover really has to do with kind of like what's framing the book or what's in the background. I scoured my own shelves for things that I already own, but of course you are always welcome to use your own shelves, the library, Kindle, you know, whatever you've got. Or if you want to use this as an excuse to buy a new book, who am I to stop you from having that joy? The area I think I've seen the most of this is like fantasy and romantasy specifically. So let's look at a couple of examples from those categories. So when I'm talking about an ornate pattern, what I'm really talking about is something that's kind of in the background of this focal point. It's often in foil, but does not have to be in foil. And you can see with Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson that, you know, there's just like a lot of this little filigree, a lot of this fancy pattern, and it creates a really nice backdrop to the sword, the title, the author name, but it's got an ornate pattern. Now, with the Book Covered Book Club, you know that you can always do what's on the front, the spine, and on the back. And in this case, this is a great example because it's got a little bit of it everywhere. I've always wanted to read this. I don't know if I'll get to this month, but this is a stunning example of an ornate pattern on the cover. Now, if you have subscribed to a myriad of different book boxes, you probably have something with an ornate pattern on the cover just in your backlog. For example, there's one I pulled that I don't even know what it's about. I just know that it came to me in either a fairy lute or an Illuma crate, or maybe an owl crate at one point. I'm no longer subscribed to 2 out of the 3 of them, so who knows? Oh, it's a fairy lute. It says it's a fairy lute. Cool. Figured it out. But this is This Golden Flame by Emily Victoria. So again, you can see here that in the background, there is like this ornate pattern. And I think one of the key things is that there's often a bit of repetition. It is in fact a pattern. It's not just a texture. And it kind of just creates something in the background, a little bit of interest. It looks kind of intricate and key-like. So This Golden Flame could work for this challenge. And then another one that I have that is definitely from a book box. I believe this is an Illuma crate. Let me check myself. Yes, it is an Illuma crate special edition. This Woven Kingdom by Tahara Mafi. See how gorgeous that intricate pattern is? And this one really is giving the sense of like texture. It's not so much that there's a lot going on in here, but this intricate pattern really creates a lot of dynamic interest on the cover. And I love things that do this. Now, I will probably be reading this book for my entry into the Book Covered Book Club for January, and that is going to be A Marvelous Light by Freya Marsk. You've probably already seen my Litland video. I'll go ahead and link it up above and down below if you'd like to see it. But this is my take. I'm going to take this plastic off because it's reflecting the light really strangely. But this was also an Illumicrate special edition. I believe the regular edition of the book also has this gorgeous pattern in the background, but this is the naked hardcover. And like, again, it's just a really beautiful, intricate, ornate pattern. So I think if you get stuck on the word ornate, you can also think about words like complex, decorative, that really kind of give a sense of grandeur or like texture to the background. Because I think that's what this is really all about, especially when it comes to these fantasy books. But that's not the only genre I see this trend in realistically. I also see it creep into romance. So another kind of example, you might see ornate patterns as almost like a frame or a border, like this one, What You Gonna Do by Avery Flynn. And yes, there's like this beautiful kind of like filigree look to it, but it does kind of create an ornate pattern with the little additional kind of clues and things that will presumably be part of the book, part of the text. So this is like a more like lightweight version of an ornate pattern that could work for this prompt. You also see it in like historical romances, probably a smidge more than fantasy romances or in contemporary romances, but I'm gonna have to really zoom you in on this cover here. But this is A Lady's Formula for Love by Elizabeth Everett. This entire series has, if I can get it really close, you can see right there, kind of the really subtle pastel intricate cover in the background. And it's just a floral pattern, but all three of the books in this series have that detail to them, and this could be an easy win for the prompt. And then we kind of bridge the gap between the types of covers I was showing you before and the ones I just showed you in romance. This one is A Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting by Sophie Irwin. It is a historical romance and has kind of like this intricate background pattern on the cover. You can see some of the characters in the pattern as well. There's flowers and peacocks and books and like just little details that the longer you stare at it, the more you might pick up a texture or a pattern. Just some food for thought. And finally, there are some books that I think are more in the category of like literary fiction that have this same texture, ornate pattern to it. And these are a little bit more like creative options. So whatever genre you'd like to read in is fair game, is basically the point I'm trying to get at here. There's this one that I think is like a wee bit of a stretch, but I'm gonna roll with it. And that's The Deep by River Solomon. So like specifically, yes, you can see the waves as like the pattern of this, but if I go in really close, you can see that there is an intricate pattern in a couple of the waves. And so that's what I mean when I'm talking about checking off boxes for these prompts. Like any amount can count. I'm not here to police your good time. I'm just here to provide you some fun prompts. It's also very short if you'd like to kind of kickstart your reading in January here. But this does have an intricate pattern interwoven into a bigger pattern, which one might claim makes it more ornate. Up to you. And then again, more of a really subtle ornate pattern that still has a texture to it. And I have read this one and really enjoyed it. It is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. So on the front, it's got like a bit of a foil texture to it, but that is a really nice kind of like almost brocade-like pattern. And then on the back, you can kind of see just as clearly, but it's very subtle. It's a very subtle ornate pattern, but it's still there and it's providing a really lovely bit of texture. This is the first in kind of a companion series, so I truly believe any of the books from this series could work. This is just the only one that I currently own. And last but not least, I will likely finish this book during January, so it will probably be my second pick for the book club, and that is S.T. Gibson's A Dowry of Blood. Oh, really reflecting off my ring light. So you can see I'm like close. I'm gonna finish it this month. I've just been slowly picking away at it. But if I bring this up close, you can again, oh my God, my ring light is having a field day with this cover. There we go. There we go. But it does have like the intricate border. There's a lot of details in it. So those are the options for January. Again, those are just like 10-ish options of what could work for an innate pattern. So let me know down in the comments below if you're participating and what you're going to be reading for the January prompt or innate pattern. So in an effort to better keep up with this system and get you some recommendations beforehand, I'm going to start doing these in like 2-month increments essentially. So for February's prompt is a controversial prompt because I know a lot of people have opinions about this trend or thing that you can find, but that is a real person on the cover. So what I mean by this, to clarify, is that's very clearly not a cartoon cover, not an AI rendering of a real person. It does not have to be like somebody, a celebrity or a historical figure, though that is a way to go about this prompt. It can be a model who is portraying a character, but it is a real person. So let's get into some examples of what that looks like. So for example, if you would like to read a bunch of short stories in the sci-fi or fantasy space, I would really recommend How Long Till Black Future Month by N.K. Jemisin. Number one, this cover is really striking, and you can see I have tabbed some of the short stories in here. There's really high quality writing in this, and the cover is really cool and has a real person on the cover. Then there is a series that I actually really need to finish, but I was drawn in originally by the premise and the cover, and so the original, what is their name? Oh, His Fair Assassin series. The first one is Grave Mercy by Robin Lefevre. She has since like recovered some of these to honestly fit more with January's prompt, but I have all of the original editions of this that have the model portraying the main character here. It's very fantasy, like very YA fantasy cover, circa like mid-2000s, and I'm here for it. And then here's another like subgenre of cover that you might find with this prompt. Adaptation covers. Sometimes you get sucked into them. I have two for you here on this list. The first is this BBC cover of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. These are the actors from the BBC drama. So they are real people portraying the characters. So if you're into just like a one and done, like if you want this to be your big read, I've wanted to tackle it, but I've always been really intimidated by the size. But the cover is very atmospheric and does feature real people. Then of course, this is a great opportunity for you to get some nonfiction into your life. There's usually real people on the covers of biographies or memoirs. I could genuinely populate this whole list with just this subcategory, so I had to kind of like stretch myself and only kept it to 2, though truly most would work. Here's one that I read and loved, and actually highly recommend the audiobook for, because the author reads it, but The Princess Diarist by Carrie Fisher. I like this as an example for this trend because this is very clearly a picture of Carrie Fisher as Princess Leia, a real person portraying a fictional character, but it's a real person with like only a portion of their face, but you still know exactly who this is. You know it's a real person. Really enjoy this as a nonfiction, by the way. And then sometimes a real person could also be shown in a photograph. That is another way you could kind of work with this. Here's another book that I've wanted to read for a really long time and haven't gotten around to, but that is The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot. This is a nonfiction kind of, let's say expose or discovery piece about Henrietta Lacks. And so this is a real person that the book kind of centers around what happens to the cells of this person. But that is still a real human on the cover and also on the spine of the cover as well. Now, I'm going to pivot to our most controversial options because you know I love romance. If you're a fan of this channel, you know I'm a big user, a big reader of romance. And I know that there's some very strongly held negative beliefs about real people on the cover of our romances. I know that's not in vogue anymore. And specifically, I'm talking about like real people and not like the beautiful step backs of historicals, because those are gorgeous, but those are still artist renderings. Some people really hate when there are real folks on the cover of their romances. And that's kind of why I chose this as a prompt, because I think it's an interesting nudge to maybe read those off your shelves, or to push on why the inverse of a trend, essentially. But I have a bunch of them. So here we're going to go through these as examples. Okay, so if you're more in a fantasy romance mood, this is the first in a trilogy, I believe. But Beck McMaster tends to have a lot of real people or like models for her characters. And this is Promise of Darkness. Very atmospheric, very moody broody. And then there's usually one of two things when it comes to real people on romance covers. There's either some type of shirtless dude or a woman dramatically looking or not looking. And I feel like this is where some of these fall into. For example, Totes a model. Sin and Ink by Naima Simone, though. Really good taboo romance. So that works. Oh, also, I feel like if you have any Harlequin romances in your collection, like literally any of them will work because it's usually real people on the cover. So go forth and read your Harlequins if that's an option. Another one I would highly recommend, I really loved this book, and this is Pink Slip. It's part of the Spy Who Loved Me series by Katrina Jackson. So if that's what you're in the mood for, check out Pink Slip. Only for the Week by Natasha Bishop. That's a real person. And yeah, look, she's like dramatically not looking at you. She doesn't want to make eye contact, but that's a real person. Please read this. It's great. And then here's, as I promised, my second of the adaptation covers. I own 2 copies of this book, and I just loved the first season of Bridgerton so much that I bought the adaptation cover because I love these two and their dynamic, even though the book itself kind of mid for me. But love them, love the actors and their portrayal of these characters, which is why I now own a copy of this book. So if you have any of like adaptation oriented covers, this is also a great way to get through this prompt. Okay, so those are the book covered book club prompts and recommendations for January and February. I hope this was helpful to get you inspired, to get you thinking about like what this actually means. If you're doing something for February as well, if you're pre-planning, let me know what you think you're going to read for February and what either of these prompts like means to you. Are you attracted to them when you see them on a book cover? Do they really put you off? Let me know all your spicy thoughts down in the comment section. I look forward to reading them. Thank you for spending time with me. I hope you have a fantastic reading day or night, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Hold on, girl, now wait just a minute. I've got something to say, you should hear it. Oh, I'm happy to make time for your feelings, but you have to admit